Maybe we could bring Bryce into the conversation
Would
too.
you?
Who's been thinking a lot about, again, about music and the sort of, in the digital moment that we're in right now. Kim just mentioned a minute ago that there is a sense associated with the recent election and so forth that new kinds of cultural possibilities are opening up. But in terms of music and soundscapes that can potentially be home edited, what do you see happening out there? Is the old model of just having a really great demo tape and chopping it around and doing some live performances, is that basically dead? Are there new exciting possibilities that you're hearing out there?
Well, it's kind of like, I agree with Kim, and we both think about this kind of in the same way, that the recording industry is a dinosaur. Long gone are the days of the demo tape. You don't send in tapes of a trashy tape of yourself, playing that's of low quality and then hope that the record company will see through it and pick you up. Now you're expected almost a full album before that record company.
You need a base. You basically need to be a self-sustaining entity, or if you're not a self-sustaining entity, you need to be able to make the accommodations that the record company says before you. They're like, okay, your singer needs to lose 10 pounds and dye her hair black.
And there's a stencil.
Oh, absolutely.
And just like that, there's a stencil that you're expected to have this typical instrument schema. And that's the great thing about Boston, which I completely agree with you, is that you can have the most odd collection of instrumentalists creating beautiful art music, and it's acceptable in this scene.
Violin, synth keyboard, and male and female vocals, and it's one of my friends who've been touring Europe lately. It's open for Amanda Palmer and all that kind of stuff. So,
sweet. Yeah, so that's one of the beautiful things about this climate in Boston. But as far as recording goes, the record industry has made itself its own worst enemy.
It hasn't kept up.
And so with the release of more technology, and especially with Macs, which are the industry standard, becoming easier accessible for people, the record industry is really falling victim to the software that it created for itself, as people use a Mac and a $150 piece of equipment to record a full studio album that sounds studio quality.
But yes, sounding studio quality, but what's new out there that hasn't been done before that's exciting you in terms of quality of sound, in terms of arrangements? Are there certain things that are happening right now that get you excited as a musician?
Well, for me, I was actually really bored for a little while. This is something I mentioned to you when I listened to a lot of the quote unquote indie music. I'm kind of an edge to me, but I felt like it was so quiet. Everything was quiet, and it really bugged me. It was either the pop stuff is all. If you look at the waveforms, it's all like it's one barrage of sound, and then the indie stuff is a sort of very wispy, twee, kind of plucky, like the Decemberists or something. They're wonderful, and that's not to say that the lyric content, the song structures, everything goes into it isn't really, really strong and really great. But there was a sort of lack of, December's not a good example, but a couple of other sort of indie bands where I just felt like that there was, I have to say, there was a lack of passion to me. And one of my favorite examples is a great, very successful performer, Feist. That she's one of I can't think of the original band she was with, but she was in the Mac commercials. 1, 2, 3, 4, very sweet. The tone of the female voice in that, lovely tone, lovely voice. That's not a voice that's going to fill an amphitheater. That's not, that's not Pipe Band Talk. That's not, that's not Etta James.
Yeah.
That's a function of a very sensitive microphone and a very good way to put atmosphere on a very simple vocal. And to me, I was like, that's very interesting on a technical level, but it doesn't move me.
Artistic.
It doesn't really move me. And I'm wondering, it's like, everybody, I thought about it. I was like, well, if you're going to listen to these very delicate songs on an iPod, you don't want to listen to maybe New Guns N' Roses, stuff, because it's just so saturated and so produced. You want to have these very simple things because you want to go in your sensitive bone. and it made more sense to me. So maybe people want to go with the barrage of the outside world. The rebellion is that sort of quiet, where you can find quiet and where you can make your own internal peace is a sort of bucking the system kind of thing. And to me, that is ridiculous. I mean, not ridiculous. I can understand that in a sense, but that's the fact that that was the flavor of independent music, that you really did for 2 years or so. It was either fun and happy and like goofy, like Jeff, or it would be something. I'm trying to think of some of the other.
But I mean, one doesn't want to reduce everything to politics, but was there a sort of reaction going on in the scene, largely, that had actually to do a lot with the late years of the Bush administration and just a general sense out there that the world was so insane and things were so out of control that all we could do is, as you say, come back into the bubble, whether or not it was an iPod bubble or not, and that maybe something's starting to happen. I mean, obviously in the hip-hop world associated with the Obama campaign and things around that, and that maybe are we possibly seeing a wave in which there's going to be things that are more expressive, a greater willingness to experiment and do something edgy that's out there?
I hope so, and I hope that the vote is a symbol of people's willingness to accept things, because I think part of the reason that everything was so sort of, like I call it, twee and sweet and fuzzy, is that, 15 seconds. If people, if you're buying what's in your iTunes, you get to sample it, 15 seconds. If you don't like it, you're not buying it. And if it doesn't meet my needs immediately, there's no, very well. Yeah. Some of my favorite albums, I did not like them when I first bought them, so I'm just going to listen to this. Don't waste my time. And then 2 years later, I listened to, or 6 months later, you listen to something and you listen to it all the way through, and you get it, and it feels good, and it's right. Whereas, and that's not going to happen if the sort of 15-second toe dipping test is how we engage music. That's going to reflect the music we consume, and thus spitting, a serpent swallowing its own tail. Going back to if people only buy that music, or buy a lot of that music in droves, that's all they're going to spit out. That's the only bands that they're going to sign. That's only more of the only bands they're going to.
But those aren't necessarily the bands you want to go see. And that's something that needs to be talked about too, is that the record industry and the live music industry are two separate entities, and they're actually battling it out, more or less. Because you can download songs online, and most artists encourage you to download a free sample of this song, and that's the song that always becomes popular because it was free. It cost nothing. Yeah. Exactly. And so, in that way, record companies are losing out because I might like to listen to Joshua Redman or some of these other big jazz cats, but I want to go see some balls to the wall free improvisation for a couple hours. Yeah, I just want to see some angry people just make awesome noise. Yeah. And so those guys are never going to get signed.
Talented people making
talented people. But those guys are never going to get signed to a record company, and there's not a huge market to hear that. And that's because part of the experience with music now isn't so much listening as much as visual. We don't go and listen to Madonna or listen to Moby or listen to these guys. We go and see them. Music, as far as an industry, has become a theatrical, which I completely agree with, is that you can have the